I'm Tom from Do-It-Yourself Home Automation, and this is a look at some of the, I think, pretty magical things you can do with the FLIR One Generation 3 thermal camera. So I've shown in other videos, the FLIR camera is a pretty cheap, it's about $200 thermal camera that you can get from FLIR, and you plug it into your smartphone, and it allows you to see visually the heat generated by different objects around your house, and out in the world too. So I think there's some really awesome things you can do with this, and it allows you to see, as FLIR puts it, a sixth sense. So to be able to see things in the world you wouldn't otherwise be able to see. So I'm going to take a look at some of my favorite, and there's practical uses for this too that I'll cover in other videos. But this is just an overview of some of the really interesting things to look at around the house with the FLIR camera. So one thing I love is looking at devices that are using power. So these are my plug strips under my desk, and you can see which devices under here are actually heating up, and that indicates which ones are using electrical power. So we talk about phantom power and vampire loads, things where even if a device is switched off, it's using up power and costing you money. It's hard to visualize that just looking at a bunch of plug strips. But with this view from the heat, you can see very clearly which of my devices under here. Here's my UMA phone. These are some AC adapters glowing with all the heat that they're generating. And you can see those are using power. So again, there's that vampire load actually visualized. And this is sort of a FLIR classic. This is the chair I just got out of. So you can see that the heat, the residual heat from me sitting in that is actually still visible on the chair. And you can get some insights into, how you sit. So you can see that the edges there on the left side, the right side of the chair, the left side of the frame are a little bit warmer. So I'd probably lean more towards that side and more towards my right arm because I am right-handed on that armrest. And then you can see I definitely sit more towards the front of the chair. So pretty neat. You can actually just visualize where you were just sitting based on the thermal signature there. And this is sort of neat in the same vein. This is my computer mouse, and you can see the mouse itself is glowing there because I was just using it, but also the path I was using on the desk as I moved the mouse around has actually been heated up. So you can see almost like an L shape going out to the side, from the mouse moving up and down and also side to side as I scroll through things on the computer. So again, these signatures of your heat actually persist for a while after you finish using a device in your house. So this is a pretty obvious but also really helpful one to look at. This is my computer under my desk. It's a Dell Tower, and you can see where on here is heating up as it's operating. And, it's pretty obvious starting to look at this that it's venting most of the heat through the top back portion here. And if you come around the back of the computer, it's definitely venting heat out the back, but less than you'd expect. The hottest area is actually the top vent on here. Now, I remember computers used to almost always vent heat out the back, but this makes so much more sense that it's venting out the top because, obviously heat rises, and also the area right behind it is not going to have great ventilation because it's basically against a wall. So, venting out the top where there's plenty of clearance here, and there's going to be better airflow, it actually makes a lot of sense. I didn't even realize that the case had been redesigned to have a vent on the top until I took a look at this output from the camera, and you can see exactly where the hottest sections of your computer are. Now, another cool thing with the FLIR camera, you can put this little spot sensor on there, and I can actually check what the temperature is of the air coming out. So it's about 100 degrees on there right now. So in the genre of things you didn't even know were using power, here's my Philips toothbrush charger. There's nothing plugged into it at all, and you can see from the little hotspot there that its little induction charger here is actually creating heat, and thus we can tell it's using electrical power. Again, I don't even have a toothbrush on that to be charged, and it's still drawing a certain number of watts, which obviously is costing me money over time. So here's the bathroom sink. I'm going to turn the hot water spigot on, and you can see as it starts to flow into the basin there, it's a little bit hotter than the surrounding environment, but not super hot yet. And then as the water starts to heat up and get more hot water, you can see it's getting a lot hotter. start to feel that. It doesn't even feel that warm yet, but you're getting more of a contrast, and you can see the water actually flowing up through the back here on the faucet, and then the flow of water coming out, and then coming into the basin. You can see exactly where it's heating up on the inside there. Now, one thing that's, again, really helpful with the spot metering here, I'm going to turn that on. I can actually point that at the water stream and see what the temperature of my hot water is. I find it's helpful to point it at a surface that the water is actually hitting. So it's heating up, and you want to have your hot water be usually over 100 degrees, around 110 to 120. Anything higher than that, you start to risk scalding injuries. So the recommendation is to make sure that you're not keeping your water too hot. And again, this is a great way to spot check it. So with this sort of fully heated up, looks like it's kind of stopping around 117, 118. It's a pretty good temperature, I think, for me. Obviously, you'd want to tailor this to if you have older or younger people in your house, but for me, that's a good result for temperature. This is a really cool way to visualize that hot water flowing through my system there. So people joke about cold feet. You can see, if you look at your own feet with a thermal camera, everything is pretty warm except toes tend not to be. More at the temperature of the floor around you. Hopefully that's an okay thing. Another really interesting thing to look at with thermal cameras is an animal. So people use this actually, they'll use a FLIR One thermal camera to spot wildlife in the woods at night. Or to even locate a lost animal if one of your dogs or other kind of pet runs away. So here's my dog under the thermal camera. He's just kind of chilling on the couch here. And you can see, immediately his ears are a little bit colder than the rest of his body. And his eyes and nose are radiating a lot of heat. And, as you would know, if you ever sit on a spot your dog's been sitting on before, it's nice and warm. You can see his claws are coming out here, but this area where he just had his head is actually warm on the couch there. So he's heating up the chair there. And one thing I think is funny is to use this right after you come home, and you can actually point it at different chairs around the house and see the residual heat. You can tell where your dog naps all day. Even if he came to the door and greeted you when you came home, you can see a big dog-shaped spot where they used to be on the chair. So this is a look at the inside of my fridge, and I've shown how to actually use this to diagnose hot and cold spots in other videos. But it's kind of neat just to get a visual look at where are the coldest sections, where are the warmer sections in the fridge. Upper right definitely looks like it's pretty warm. And then these sort of lower sections on the shelves are very cold. I've actually found if I leave stuff there, it tends to freeze. And the shelf in the middle here, the drawer, is kind of doing its job of keeping things at a middle temperature there. The items that are glowing orange are probably not actually that warm. They're probably just reflecting heat from the room now that I've opened the door. But definitely interesting. And you can see that there are hot and cold spots, but overall the door is definitely lighter colored, and thus that means warmer than the interior of the fridge. So best not to keep things there that spoil easily. Another great use for a thermal camera is to check for air leaks around your house, where you might be losing hot or cold air depending on the season. So these are some of my doors, and you can see the doors themselves are not terrible in terms of insulation. Definitely some heat flux through there. But the gap between the doors here, definitely, you're seeing some heat flowing in from the outside. It's a hot day out. And then under the door, if I can come down here, you can see we're definitely losing some of the AC, getting some heat flowing in from the outside through those gaps. And especially this actual gap here, so putting in a little draft excluder or something like that would probably be a good way to prevent that heat loss. And these screws that go all the way through the door, and then even there's some damage, like this physical little kind of cut in the door, those are definitely leaking. So those would be things that you could patch, put some caulk into, and that would help to reduce the amount of heat that's coming in from the outside. The fan is actually an interesting thing to look at here, because you can see the fan is not actually creating colder air. Fans cool you by blowing air over your skin, and then through evaporation you lose heat and cool yourself down with that moving air, but they don't actually cool the air itself. And you can see that pretty well illustrated here, because looking at the fan, the surface is actually a little bit warmer, which makes sense because the air is moving through these moving parts in the fan. Feels cooler to me because it's blowing on me and helping me to cool myself down, but it's not actually cooling the air down at all. What does actually cool the air down, though, is your air conditioner. So I switched the AC on, and then I can point this at the vent, and you can see the air flowing out of that is already much cooler than the air around. And I can actually spot check that and see, at the moment I just switched the system on, it's generating around 67-degree air. So that'll definitely cool the interior of the house down, and it's even starting to get a little bit colder. So you can see a definite contrast versus the fan, which is just moving the existing air in the house around. Now this is looking outdoors, and you can actually see some really interesting things here. My deck in the lower left, being not a plant surface, is warmer than a lot of the other areas around here. Interestingly, the black hose that I have going across my area here is actually absorbing a certain amount of heat. So it's because the dog's going to walk into the frame. Is actually warmer, and then these little areas that are being hit by sun are obviously warmed up, but just the blank ground that's not paved and not a wood surface ends up actually being colder than the other areas around it. And you can see the water feature over there is one of the coldest areas because it does have that water that's retaining the cold from the nighttime and cooling it down. So you can see pretty readily from this, I think, how paved surfaces, especially in an urban environment, heat up more, but these nice grassy surfaces and plants and things are actually helping to cool this backyard area down. Now if you found this helpful in any way, or if you want to see more of what I do with my FLIR One Gen 3 camera, please subscribe to my channel. It really helps. And I do have a cold at the moment, so I do apologize if my voice sounds a little bit strange in the video, but please do think about subscribing and check out more of my FLIR One videos. Thanks so much.